Craft as a brand has been around for a while, more prominently in the triathlon space. But in 2025, Craft is doubling down on running and has released a bunch of road and trail shoes. And this is the most premium of them all. Meet the Craft Kype Pro. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today, like I said, we're going to be reviewing the Kype Pro by Craft, and if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of this review, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full video when you get a second, as I put a lot of time and effort into these. And if you've been a viewer for a while, but you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please consider doing so today and turning on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video. Now, to kick off this video, some quick disclaimers and disclosures about the shoe. I was given it for free from Craft for the purpose of review. That being said, I'm not being paid. I'm not obligated to include the shoe in any actual content, nor am I given talk tracks, talking points, nor does anyone watch these videos beforehand. All thoughts are entirely my own. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of the Kype Pro. The Kype Pro is Craft's super shoe. So it is made for the marathon distance, it is made to go fast, and it is made to cover that 26.2. But as with many super shoes, you can definitely race down or potentially up in distance depending on your needs and your preference. As such, that's how we're going to be evaluating the shoe today. Now, from a price standpoint, the shoe does come in at a pretty steep $300, which puts it at a premium tier of super shoe. At least off the top of my head, the only shoes that are more expensive than that in that super shoe tier are the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro Evo 1 and 2, which are $500 single-use optimized shoes, and really more of like an obligatory general release so that the professionals can race in them legally. So all in all, you are looking at a pretty steep price point for a super shoe. Now from a specs perspective, the shoe comes in at an impressive 6.9 ounces, which is 198 grams, and then you have 40 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot, and an 8mm heel-to-toe drop. So all in all, the shoe is light, which is really, really good. Obviously, that's something that I definitely look for in a racing shoe, and then you're still getting a high stack in that heel and in that forefoot, so 40 full millimeters of cushion in that heel, making it legal for professional use and just very cushioned overall. Now from a fit perspective, I feel like the shoe fits true to size lengthwise, but as far as the width of the shoe, I do feel like it fits fairly wide throughout the shoe. Now it's most notable in kind of the front I don't know if I'd fully call it like the forefoot area, but kind of the front end of the midfoot, as well as in that toe box. You have plenty of room, plenty of breathability there. The heel is a little bit more standard, but maybe even on the wider end. And then that midfoot is going to be really wide foot friendly, maybe not full wide, but as far as super shoes go, they are wider fitting overall. It's worth noting though that Craft did use a new last for pretty much all of their shoes in 2025. So if you've worn Craft shoes in the past, they actually are more narrow than they used to be. And again, when I say more narrow, they're still generally wide, but they used to be very baggy and very loose on foot, where this is a little bit more on the either the wide end of standard or the lower end of wide. Now moving to the upper of the shoe, you have this aero mesh, and it's made with a mono yarn knit, right? So you can kind of see it's very, very breathable. You have kind of the ability to pretty much see through the shoe, at least if you're close to it. You've got kind of that synthetic weave going through, and then it's almost like a sock-like fit, but really the only kind of stretch in the shoe as far as that fit is going to be there in the tongue. So the rest of it is pretty locked down. It is breathable, but it's not going to be like overly baggy by any means. As far as cushion in the upper, you just have kind of that classic super shoe like strip of cushion there in the heel, which helps kind of keep your heel locked down and gives you a little bit of comfort and reduces potential for rubbing or friction or blistering on the Achilles. Now from a lockdown standpoint, initially I felt like the shoe felt pretty good, but I did notice that as my runs got a little bit longer, the shoe seemed to loosen up a little bit, and I think it has to do with the elasticity of kind of that tongue area. You can see you've got that extra stretch just right there. And so on today's run, for example, I did about 8 miles I did 6-mile repeats with about a minute and a half rest in between, kind of around that threshold effort. So I wasn't even going like 5K pace. We were pretty relaxed as far as speed work goes. And towards the end of the workout, I did feel myself shifting around in the shoe and sliding around a bit because I just feel like the shoe almost loosened up a little bit. Now you do have that extra eyelet, so you might be able to do, and it's kind of right there, I don't know if it's blending in, but you might be able to do some type of runner's knot with these, which might help at least with the heel lockdown, but I didn't feel like my heel was necessarily slipping around at all. It really was kind of in that forward end of the midfoot or back of the forefoot. That kind of area is where I was shifting to the point where I was getting a little bit of hot spots on the bottom of my feet. I think I might just have to play with the lacing a little bit more to try and get it locked down better. Honestly, that's kind of the issue sometimes with these almost booty-like uppers, is that it's harder to get a lockdown. So if they don't fit you like exactly right, you may shift a little bit in the shoe. Outside of that though, the upper is very comfortable and I didn't have any additional issues or hot spots in it. I do like the breathability for the most part and how lightweight it is. So moving to the midsole, you have what's called XX foam as well as a forked carbon fiber plate. So you can see here that there isn't a plate that runs through the middle of the shoe. It's actually forked in the same geometry as you're seeing here on the outsole. So you kind of have the big piece here and then you have two kind of plates or two pieces of the plate that run back like tails, and then they actually do ramp up like that. They follow kind of the curvature of the midsole right there. So that's supposed to do a couple of things, right? So that split kind of midsole is supposed to reduce some ground contact time. It's supposed to give you a little bit of a natural kind of toe off from heel to toe with the geometry as well as the angle of the plate. And then the foam, that XX foam, is PIBA based. So now with most PIBA, it's going to be a little bit more squishy. With this PIBA, it is a little bit on the firmer side overall. And because of that, that plate also has cutouts in it in that forefoot and toe area so that the foam can interact through the plate. So they're saving weight as well as allowing the foam to squish and compress a little bit more through the plate. That way the plate is just giving it kind of the structure and rigidity that you would need in a super shoe to kind of tame the foam that you're using. Now, for the most part, my experience with this foam is that this is maybe one of the more stable super shoes, if not the most stable super shoe that I've run in, at least in recent memory. That basically cut out there in the midsole, down the middle, I know it's supposed to reduce ground contact time, and I can't tell you whether it did or didn't do that for me, but what I can tell you is that it creates a very stable kind of channel and flow for your foot. So the shoe kind of forces a specific stride, which will prevent you from kind of rolling in or out. The other thing is the overall shape of that midsole and outsole. It does widen out there in that toe box and forefoot area. And so you have a really, really wide base that you kind of land and toe off on. And my overall experience, again, with the shoe is it felt firm. Like, I did notice the firmness of that foam while running. It's fast, it's responsive, but I think because of the overall geometry of it and then the firmness of the foam being a little bit firmer than a lot of other PIBA-based shoes on the market, it did feel a little bit slappy, at least with my stride. So as I came through, I felt like I was hitting, maybe I was heel striking more than I normally would in this shoe, but I felt like I was hitting that forefoot a lot and I wasn't getting quite the pop that I would want or the smooth transition that I would really want in the shoe. And I feel like I feel like I struggled to almost compress the foam down and get the full capability out of it, which is a little uncommon for me, given that I am on the heavier side, at least at my height, for kind of runners who are using the shoe generally. So as far as, you know, that sensation, it is going to be a firmer overall ride. You're not going to get a lot of squish, but with that, you're going to get a lot of stability and support, and you're still going to get some good snap and responsiveness that you are looking for in a super shoe. Now, from a pace versatility standpoint, obviously, I mean, it's a marathon racer, so I wouldn't be doing kind of easy runs in the shoe, but because of the stability, it may be a little bit more pace versatile as far as different varying paces that people want to run a marathon at. Moving to the outsole, you have what's called light sole, and you can see that there on the forefoot area as well as kind of there in the heels. You have the two pads, and then you have kind of like almost like a tire-like tread on the outsole of the shoe. Overall, I felt like the grip did a really, really good job. It is a fairly thin rubber there, so you're not getting a ton of extra weight from it as well. So overall, that's really, really nice. I will say that I did feel like it gripped the road really well. I used it on the treadmill a little bit too. I felt like it gripped the treadmill, and my treadmill can get kind of slick sometimes. And so overall, I do think it's a really, really solid tread. Something of note though, is you can already see there kind of in the middle of that outsole, you're starting to get some deterioration, some wear and tear just around the edges of where that rubber meets the kind of the foam. This is not specific to the Kype Pro. A lot of super shoes that kind of have these two pads here at the back will oftentimes get that wear and tear around it. But with this firmer foam, it's supposed to be a little bit more durable, and that's just maybe to be seen how that's going to hold up. I almost feel like they should have extended this pad over here a little bit further out, because you can see that that's about to wear down pretty quick as well. I don't think that that is going to hurt the stability of the shoe or the performance of the shoe too much though, but it is something to note that that is wearing fairly quickly. Now, as far as who's this shoe for, honestly, I think there's a lot of people who would really enjoy this shoe, just because if you're looking for something that is more stable, a little bit more firm, isn't going to be super squishy. Like, I get a lot of people in my comments asking me, what's the most stable carbon plated shoe, right? This might be it. You know, I'd have to sit down and really think about the different options out there, but as far as like super shoe, marathon racing shoe, full-blown carbon fiber plate with a PEBA foam, I think this might take the cake as far as stability. So that's something to think about. The other thing is, if you don't like the overly squishy foam, some people, you know, the squishy foams, they end up hurting their feet a little bit too much and whatnot. So if you want something for that support, that's also going to be a good option for you. This could be a potential Hyrox option is another thing. You know, with the stable base as well as solid overall grip, you'd have to test it for the sled push, obviously, but I do think that this could work pretty well for you in a Hyrox scenario. I don't like, it does have a rocker, obviously, but I don't think it has any more aggressive of a rocker than a lot of the super shoes that released this year, and that firmer foam is going to help you out on things like the lunges and the heavy carries. So could be a really good Hyrox shoe as well. You know, just some final thoughts. All in all, I like the direction that Craft went with the Kype Pro. You know, there's a couple of different like high-tech things they did with the plate, you know, both being forked as well as having kind of the cutouts. You know, Aris is a really kind of cutting edge carbon fiber plate company, so it's cool to see them use that, right? The new XX foam, it's firm, it's supposed to be more durable than a lot of more other PEBAs, a little bit more resilient, but for me, maybe it was a little bit too firm, right? Maybe the shoe was a little bit too stable, and I would have liked a little bit more bounce or a little bit more pop. But the shoe is still fast, and that foam is definitely going to have a market as well. The Aero Mesh upper, I really think it's like a few tweaks away from being really good. I just haven't found my lockdown quite in it yet, but I'll definitely need to test it out again with that runner's knot and see if that fixes any shifting in the shoe. So, you know, I think this is a big upgrade for Craft as far as the direction of their super shoes and where they're going, but I still do feel like it's lacking in a couple of areas, at least for my preferences. So I'll be curious to see, you know, what they do in future years. They definitely are upping the research and the materials, like I said, that they're putting into their shoes. They put a lot of love and care into their products, and I do think that that really came through. So overall, really solid shoe, and just depending on what you're looking for, it may or may not be your preference. Really, you'll just have to determine that for yourself. So if you watched this far, I sure appreciate you. Please take a second, let me know in the comments what questions you have about the Kype Pro or any other shoe related questions that you may have, as well as suggestions of what I could be doing better to make these videos even better for each and every one of you. And if you're still here and you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please consider doing so now, as it goes a long way in helping me continue to grow this channel. And lastly, we'll leave you with a question, which is, what kind of sensation do you prefer in a foam underfoot for a marathon racing shoe? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.